This is the Hilda Maria Kadosh, right? So again, Alinu. Okay. Okay, let's go. How do we start this? Oh, let's start already. Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Shulchan Aruch Or HaChaim, Hilchot Tefillin, and we are starting Siman Lamed Het today, Bezrat Hashem, on Daf Sameh Amud Bet, in regular prints of Mishna Berurah. And the discussion of this Siman primarily is going to be discussing who is Hayav to Mitzvah of Tefillin and who is Patur from the Mitzvah of Tefillin. Chole me'ayim, Patur ma Tefillin, someone that has digestive problems, stomach problems, that constantly has to use the bathroom, and he cannot keep what we call a guf naki, a clean body. He constantly is in need of letting gas because of the trouble that he's experiencing with his stomach health, is patur from tefillin. Writes the Mishna Berurah, hu adin mishata mashkia mishalshel, and someone that for healing purposes he had to drink something that brings him to empty out his stomach, basically diarrhea. That also is something that would make you patur from tefillin for a while, for time being, until that is basically out of his system. Mishum de tefillin by guf naki, as we mentioned, because the tefillin needs a clean body. And says the Shulchan Aruch in the Hagar, Rema adds, afilu elo tsar, even if you don't have any sar, the Gemara says in Masechet Ketuvot, and else for different Tanaim that they had problem with their stomach and they had to constantly take the tefillin off and put it back on. And some people could experience sar from the choli me'ayim, and Shulchan Aruch, the Rama adds that even if he doesn't have sar, it's just that he cannot keep a clean body, still is patur from tefillin. Avar she'ar chole, but regular sick person, im mista'er becholio ve'en da'ato miyushav alav, if he is in such pain that he has no yishuv hadat, he can't keep his mind clear on tefillah and tefillin, then he's patur. But if he doesn't have pain, if he's not in sar, then he's chayav. But by choli me'ayim, even if he is not in tsar, if he is not in pain, someone that's experiencing digestive problems, that would be a separate heter, that even without pain, he would be absolved from the mitzvah of tefillin. Now, this that Maran writes is patur from tefillin. Mishna Berurah writes in Od Gimal, Mi shebitel mitzvah tefillin machmat choli. If somebody has not put tefillin for 30 days consecutively straight because of the sickness, you don't have to go back and say shahayanu, just like a bar mitzvah bachur does not say shahayanu on the tefillin that he puts on for the very first time. Sar, even if you are going in marketplaces, in streets, still you're patur. ואסור לו להחמיר על עצמו בזה, אלא בשעת קריאת שמע ותפילה, אם יודע שיוכל להעמיד את עצמו בגוף נקי. Only this person that has stomach problems, only in the time of Shema and Tefillah, if he knows for sure he could keep a guf naki for just a few minutes, he'll put on tefillin. So remember, Maran holds that the mitzvah of tefillin is the whole day. So when Maran says you're patur from mitzvah tefillin, means you don't have to put it the whole day. How about if I put it just for 5 minutes, 2 minutes to do the mitzvah of tefillin and I take it off? So it says the Mishna Berurah, if you know for sure, you can keep yourself for just a few minutes until you basically are done with Shema, done with Shmoneh Esrei, then put it on. But if you can't even guarantee that much, then he would be completely patur from tefillin. Why? Why is he patur? Shema mitoch hasar yasiach tato mehem. So now, the Rama added that a regular chole that has nothing to do with the stomach, if he is in pain, is patur from tefillin. And the explanation of that gives the Mishna Berurah is because of the pain that he's experiencing, he may not be able to keep his mind on tefillin. And we already have established in the beginning of Hilchot Tefillin that a tefillin that you put on, you have to have your mind on it all the time. It's asur to do hesach hadat. It's asur to take off your mind from the tefillin that you're putting, aside from the time that you're learning and the time that you're davening Shemona Esrei, which you don't have to deliberately be on top of it to remember every second. But short of that, you have to be every moment of putting on tefillin has to be mindful. So a person that's in pain, because of the pain he's experiencing and his sickness, he may be not able to keep his focus, to keep his mind on tefillin, and hence he would be absolved from the tefillin on that moment, those moments. Again, if he could concentrate for just a moment to put it on, say Shema, and take it off, he will be obligated to do, especially based on the Yabia Omer that we spoke yesterday on the first Biur Halacha in Siman Lamed Zayin. The way we paskin, unlike the Mishkenot Yaakov, that says every second of the day is the mitzvah, and you have to have it on the whole time. Nobody else says even if you put it 1 second, you're yotzeh, the minimum mitzvah you've done. Now, every minute that you have extra, of course, is also establishment of a mitzvah d'oraita, but you have done the minimum requirement when you put it on even for a second. So if this person could just focus and forget about his pain for just a moment, put on tefillin, at least to do the minimum mitzvah, of course, he would need to do that as well. Now, Shulchan says, Mishebari in Seif Bet, Mishebari she'eno yachol leitpalel b'ro hafacha. Someone that knows for sure they cannot go through a tefillah without letting gas. Mutaf she'avor zman tefillah mima she'itpalel b'lo guf naki. Better would be for him to wait until after zman tefillah even, and not daven without a guf naki. Because just like, again, with tefillin, you cannot pass gas. The same thing would be with the tefillah of Shemona Esrei. We're going to discuss this later on when you get to Hilchot Tefillah, Siman Pei. We're going to discuss this a little bit more in the beginning of the Siman there. If you know that you can hold yourself in a guf naki, at least for the duration of Shema. So then says the Shulchan Aruch, Yaniach tefillin ben Ava lekriyat Shema, between Avat Olam and Shema, pause, quickly put on tefillin, say your Shema, take them off. And says Shulchan Aruch, v'yevarech, even though that you're in amidst Birkot Kriyat Shema, you're between Avat Olam and Shema Yisrael, or Tamo Yisrael, and you put on tefillin, and you say, Yaniach tefillin. In the middle of Birkot Kriyat Shema, you say a bracha. So says the Mishna Berurah, Mishebarilo, if you for sure know that you cannot go through a tefillah with a guf naki, it's coming to exclude if you don't know for sure. If you're not so sure, maybe I could hold myself, maybe I can't hold myself. Then says the Mishna Berurah, then you cannot forget about Zman Tefillah, forget about letting the time of Tefillah pass, but even you cannot miss a Tefillah b'tzibur for that. You can't say, well, I have one minyan at 6 a.m. I'm not sure if I could keep a guf naki right now, so maybe I should let the Tefillah b'tzibur pass. I'll daven b'yachid at 9 o'clock, before Zman Tefillah passes, of course. By then, hopefully, I'll have a guf naki and says, sure, you can't do that. You're chayav to daven b'tzibur, even though that you're doubtful if you could keep a guf naki. Only if you for sure know that you cannot keep a guf naki, then you would have to let go of tefillah b'tzibur and even let go of tefillah b'zman. You let the zman tefillah pass, in hopes that after this one tefillah, hopefully you will have a guf naki and daven the avid before Hatzot or what not.
We consider if he has to pass gas, that's guf naki, or only if he has to use bathroom. So which one?
Even passing gas. That's what Shulchan Aruch says.
He holds himself.
No, that's a different story. We haven't gotten there yet. We're going to discuss when a person needs to use the facilities and how much he could hold himself. That becomes a question. But for holding yourself from passing gas, it's not a problem. So long as you can hold yourself. That's not the suffix. No, we're talking about someone that doesn't know if you can control himself. That's not an option over here. But first of all, you have to understand that Rashi and some of the Geonim hold that even if you are holding tefillin in your hand, holding the tefillin in your hand, you cannot pass gas. Forget about being it on you. Now, we don't necessarily pass it like that. We try to be mahmir. Pesach Eliyahu Falk in his Shuvot, Mahzer Eliyahu, he brings different stadim of Kula and Humra in this, but nevertheless, that's not always an easy idea to do because, again, to put it in a way that it's completely off its place of kashrut is not so simple either, especially by tefillin of the hand that is tightened on the zerah. So it's not such a simple thing, even if you don't pass like Rashi and other Geonim. So says the Mishna Berurah, that's only talking about the tefillah of Shemona Esrei because you're standing in front of king. You're omed lifnei melech. You have to conduct yourself as a person that is standing in front of the king. And it's not bekavod to daven in a way that you know for sure that you have to pass gas in the middle, and then you have to wait and not daven until the smell goes away. That's not something respectful for a conduct in front of the king. But Kriyat Shema and brachot of Kriyat Shema is mutar. I mean, of course, he has to pause until there's no smell, as we're going to learn later on. But that's not disrespectful because it's not standing in front of the king like Shemona Esrei is. But of course, it's below tefillin. Of course, you cannot do it with a tefillin. You have to take off the tefillin and put it back on. Whereas when you're standing in tefillah, even if you didn't have tefillin on, even if you talk about tefillat minha, still is not a proper kavod for a person that knows for sure I'm going to be standing for the next 7 minutes, daven Shemona Esrei, and in the middle I would need to do something that would make me pause until the smell is off. That's by itself is not respectful. So you can't start the chatchila tefillah that you know you have to pause it in such nature in the middle. That's considered not kavod for omed lifnei hamelech. Now, says, by the way, the Ben Ish Chai says that there are those who say that the isur of passing gas in the middle of tefillah is the isur from the Torah. The Ben Ish Chai says, because it's a bizui mitzvah. You're disgracing the mitzvah, and he says that it's not. The isur does not apply unless it is something that has a bad smell. But if you have passing gas that doesn't have any bad smell, then he says it's not included in the issue. So Ben Ish Chai writes, but again, it's one of those things that you never know necessarily. So it's a difficult thing to ascertain, to say, well, is it going to be a bad smell? It's not going to be. I'm not sure if there's a science to this or not, but nevertheless, it's what the Ben Ish Chai writes. And differentiates between when you have something that will disturb the tefillah by you having to wait because of the smell or not, which is the main criteria as we're going to discuss in the Simanim, the upcoming Simanim Be'ezrat Hashem. Says doesn't have to have a sound. If it's got to be, again, we spoke about this before in the Halachot of Bet HaKiseh, that the itush milamata. It's not a halachic concept. It's just this it is, of course, embarrassing for the person, but again, for all practical purposes, it doesn't have to have something that it has that issue. It could be without any noise. It still is a problem. Bishat Kriyat Shema, Siman Pei b'Mishna Berurah. So we already mentioned that in Siman Pei, this is going to become the major thing that we're going to discuss in the beginning of Siman Pei. So we're going to discuss that over there. So says the Mishna Berurah, Shulchan said that you even make a bracha on your Kriyat Shema, on your tefillin rather, in middle of Birkot Kriyat Shema, between Avat Olam and Shema Yisrael. So says the Mishna Berurah, V'ikra bahen Shema v'achar kach yechal. You say Shema, you say the bracha, you put them on. You say Shema, you take them off. ויודע שאין יכול לאסור עצמו מלהפיח אלא בכדי שיוכל לחלוץ של ראש. If you know that you so precisely know yourself, and you know that I could only put it on, say Shema, and right away take off the shel rosh, but shel yad is going to take forever to take off. So I'm not sure if I could, I can't hold until I take off the tefillin shel yad. Says the Mishna Berurah, afilu hachi mutar la'aniach lechatchila et shnehem. Still, you could put both of them on. Ken katav ha'magen Avraham, aval ha'pri megadim mefakfek bazeh. This is what Magen Avraham and Pri Megadim disagree with each other. Magen Avraham says, even if you could only take off the tefillin shel rosh, you still put them on. And Pri Megadim says, no. Both of the tefillins have this problem that you can't put them on if you know you're going to have hafacha. Therefore, if you know for sure that you can't take the shel yad before you're mafiach, you should not put them on all together. And surprisingly, over here, the Kaf HaChaim agrees with Magen Avraham, and he's lenient. Kaf HaChaim says, as long as you know for sure that you could take off tefillin shel rosh, you could put them on and say Shema with it. And he says, say it again. So as we mentioned before, the many Rishonim who hold that putting him away is not going to help really for this, because as long as you're even holding them in your hand is a problem. But even that takes some time. But without taking it completely off, again, even taking it off, it doesn't take that much time necessarily, but you have to have that time. Whatever seconds it takes is something that a person has to have time to do. But as we mentioned before, based on Rashi and other Rishonim, just moving it around, it does not necessarily help. Now, people usually do that for things that are more calm. Like, if there's a speech that you're not sure exactly if it's going to be divrei chol, not divrei chol. So some people move off the tefillin to make sure that they haven't spoken a word of divrei chol with their tefillin. As we mentioned before, this is something important to keep in mind. So for that, many people are mekel to move the tefillin a little bit and to speak. But even that, you find many people who are noheg, they just don't talk with tefillin, again, because of the kedusha of tefillin, so long as it is on you. Says the Shulchan Aruch in Seif Gimel, Nashim va'avadim pturim b'tefillin. Women and Eved Knaani is patur from tefillin. Both categories are patur from all of the positive mitzvot that are time bound. So kol mitzvot aseh shazman grama nashim pturot. Of course, all of the don't do's, all the lo ta'ases, they're hayav, and all of the positive mitzvot that don't have a specific time, also they're obligated. But tefillin is one of those that is time bound. Why? Because you can't wear it at night, says somebody. Huh? It's not correct. Laila is man tefillin we paskin. The only reason we don't put on tefillin at night is because you may fall asleep and may pass gas, and therefore we're careful not to put them at night. But be'etzem, Laila is man tefillin. So why is tefillin time bound? It's not like tzitzit that at night you patur itemoto. The reason is, as we discussed before, in Siman Lamed Aleph, Shcharuch Paskins that Shabbat and Yom Tov is not Siman tefillin, because you have the ot already, and that therefore is considered time bound. So says the Shcharuch. The Rama adds, if they want to be mahmir, imagine a woman, there was a woman in Baltimore that would come every morning to a very sophisticated daf yomi shiur, behind the mechitza, of course, and we would listen to it. So I spoke to my colleague, my friend, that was the Rav of the shul, with different halachot, teaching Gemara, not teaching Gemara, and so I said, like, and he tells me, he says, the one that knows the Gemara best is this woman. So she has gone through the entire Shas and she knows it. You could talk to her in any sugya in Shas, right? She's genius, smart. You could speak to her in Ramban, not the Ramban on Chumash, but the Ramban on Dina de Garmi, like the most complex sugyot of Shas. She understands and she's holding cup, she's understanding and holding there. And you have women that are very much sophisticated. So imagine I want to put on tefillin. Just like by lulav and etrog. There's Mishnah says Shazman Grama, Sukkah, Mishnah says some women do it. Right? Many women shake lulav and etrog. They do mitzvah says Shazman Grama. So can I do tefillin? Says the Rama. Mochin biyadan. We stop them. We don't let them do it. Why? Says the Mishna Berurah. Nashim, but tumtum v'androginos chayavim b'tefillin misafek chol mitzvot. Says the Mishna Berurah, androgynous and tumtum, which is also a form of it's not a dysplasia necessarily. It's just a condition that the genitalia of a person is not clear. It has not been developed outside the body, has been developed inside the body. So you don't know if this is an XX or an XY. Now this is much easier with a small surgery early on. They fix the tumtums and you know what they are. Androgynous is a little bit more complicated, but nevertheless, says the Mishna Berurah, both tumtum and androgynos, they're chayav b'tefillin from safek, because you're mesupak, they should put on tefillin, of course, because of the safek brachot, would say don't say bracha on it. According to Sfaradim, who those who are not chayav, they won't bring themselves to say bracha. According to Ashkenazim, they could even say bracha on it. And nashim ayin bepri migadim, says the Mishnah Berurah. Shuadin linyan avadim. Same would be with avadim. Ayin besefer Tosfot Shabbat shkatav behedya lehefech. Vayim besefer Tosfot Yerushalayim. Mochin biyadan, says the Mishnah Berurah. The reason is because it's harder for women, generally speaking, to keep a guf naki, and therefore it's not a recommended thing for them to put on tefillin, even though that we find in the era of Rishonim, there were some very well-known women that they did put on tefillin allegedly, but nevertheless is not something that halacha encourages because of the concepts that we just mentioned. And the additional reason that we stop them, the Kaf Chaim says, because potentially, according to some Rishonim, you could have a she'ela of kli gever, lo ye kli gever al isha. That tefillin is something that men, normally speaking, men wear, and therefore a woman wearing tefillin, it potentially could be transgression of lo ye kli gever al isha. A woman wearing manly clothes, it's not something that is proper. Kaf Chaim says that is also a potential problem, but you see from the Shuvot of Torah Lishma, which generally speaking we assume that the Ben Ish Chai wrote them. You see now like that from the Shuvot of the Ben Ish Chai that it's not considered lo ye kli gever al isha, because tefillin is not a malbush, it's not a clothing, it's a tachshit. It's something you put on. It's not a article of clothing, and therefore the Ben Ish Chai understands that lo tilbash applies only on levisha, something that's an article of clothing, not on things that you put on as a tachshit. And therefore, he says you're not in transgression of lo yekil gevar isha. And you see from Chafetz Chaim, from Mishna Berurah also that he doesn't hold of that. But nevertheless, again, something that's brought in Kaf HaChaim, and a person could be additionally mindful of that. Bezat Hashem, we'll start the next Seif, the days to come. Hazak.